First of all, thank you for everyone to participating today. This is our first webinar in preparation for a series of online business matching events in collaboration with Wine Australia and Austrade. My name is Readiness, and I'm the General Manager here of Commercial at FIAL, the Food and Agribusiness Industry Growth Centre, which trades as FIAL. Most people know us as FIAL. First of all, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we virtually gathered here today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. Now, these events are made possible because of all the hard work behind the scenes from the team at Austrade, the team at Wine Australia, the very small team that we have here at FIAL, and because of the extensive collaboration between various agencies. So this is true collaboration, and it's great to be involved in this type of events and opportunities as we continue to open up, hopefully open up new markets for the wine industry. And we all know that wineries out there need to diversify and need to find new customers. So that's basically what we're here to do today. We're here to educate and to follow with some impact, which is the one-on-one with the buyers, which is on the 27th of May. In particular, I would also like to acknowledge the in-market support of Austrade. Rebecca Ball, Senior Trade and Investment Commissioner to Vietnam, thank you for all your support. I know you're very new to post, so I really appreciate all the help you've given us in preparation for these events. And again, thank you again to Wine Australia for as well, coming to working with FIAL and facilitating this type of events. Charles, can you please put up the agenda on the screen?
Yeah, fantastic.
So I'm just going to very quickly go through the agenda for today. Stuart will do some opening remarks shortly. He is Stuart Buckley. He's the General Manager of Marketing at Wine Australia. We will also go through overall an Austrade market briefing with Rebecca Ball. We will also cover some in-market experts, and they will talk to the current what's happening in market on the ground currently in Vietnam with insights and market entry considerations. So we have a few different speakers that were very kind to provide some of the time today to discuss opportunities in market. Then we will go through with Paul Levin. He will talk logistics and freight to Vietnam, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So that's, in a nutshell, the agenda for today. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom call on the right-hand side. So we encourage everyone to, throughout the presentation, if there's anything that requires a little bit more clarification or more detail, or any questions that you have, we will select some of those questions at the end of the webinar today as part of the Q&A element. Charles, next slide. Just very quickly, just slide 3, please. Just very quickly, FIAL. If you're not familiar with FIAL, we're a non-for-profit organisation that was established by the Australian government to facilitate the development and growth of the food and agribusiness industry. FIAL is the catalyst that encourages the food sector to collaborate, and now wine as well, to grow and share Australian food in the global marketplace. Now, there's a few opportunities here. If just wanted to, we have a new platform. It's called the Markets Insights and Information. We call it the MII in short. It's basically a portal with the latest market trends in food, and there is some alcoholic data in there as well too, for wine, beer and spirits, and agribusiness, from not only from industry from across Australia, but also from around the globe. This site was designed to provide businesses with global market trends and statistical information to assist with export decisions. Now it's free to gain access. You just have to register, and you can compare various different markers, reports, do a forecast. There's 38 different categories across 177 countries. And as I said, this is for free. So if you're looking to do some market research for other potential markets moving forward, I highly encourage everyone to utilize this free platform. Moving on to the AFC, the Australian Food and Beverage Catalogue, we have now added a section with alcohol, so beer, wine, and spirits. So we highly encourage everyone, if you haven't already, to set up your profile. And we have in excess of 550 plus qualified international buyers from across the globe. There's 1,200 plus Australian exporters, export-ready companies on there. It's free, and it's just another opportunity to create connections and find potential new customers in various other markets around the globe. Finally, I mentioned at the start of the introduction that FIAL is working with Austrade and One Australia to deliver some virtual Meet the Buyer events. On the 27th of May will be the first virtual event we're running on wine, but we have run other events for food and ag. In fact, to date, we've run 11 events. We've had 350 exporters participate from across the country. We have had 253 buyers, and we've facilitated 915 one-to-one meetings. And I know that there's quite a few case studies behind the scenes where quite a few of those meetings have resulted in commercial deals put together and a commercial outcome, which is what we're looking for. So we're very excited to be working with wineries, and as I said, we want Australia on this project moving forward. But without further ado, I'll let Stuart Buckley, as I said, General Manager Marketing, One Australia, do some opening remarks. And thank you again. And over to you, Stuart.
Well, thank you, Rod. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for attending today. This Vietnamese trade readiness webinar, jointly presented by FIAL and One Australia and Austrade. The intent today is really to give you some additional information to exporters seeking to diversify into new markets because of the Chinese scenario. We have a huge focus on finding new opportunities, and obviously I think Rebecca will probably touch on it under the Agri Expansion Business Initiative. Austrade and One Australia globally are working together, sometimes with FIAL, to find new opportunities. And one opportunity I just want to flag up to everyone today is a new platform that One Australia launched back on the 27th of April. Called Australian Wine Connect. Now, our priority markets going forward, some of you already know this, big focus on the USA, Canada in terms of British Columbia, Quebec and Ontario. Europe, UK has been a traditional market for us. Then in the Asian markets, it's very much Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, South Korea and Taiwan initially. Now, part of the problem that we've got at the moment is traditional expos, trade events are just not happening. So what we have done is develop the Connect platform. Charles, can you go to the next page, please? So what we have developed through the Export Regional Wine Support Package, or the 50 mil package, is the Connect platform. And this really is an always-on virtual platform. Currently, we have over 250 wineries that have signed up to this particular 12-month program. As part of this program, this is where we're working with FIAL and Austrade to try and find B2B matching opportunities. It is a live expo, so you can go on and find new opportunities. There is also a virtual conferencing part of the platform where seminars, virtual tastings are also being scheduled and deployed. So it's always on, it's out there for more wineries to sign up to. It is a 12-month program, but it's a very powerful outcome. That launched on the 27th of April, and we've had some interesting results so far in terms of over 14,000 page views. There are a number of wineries that have already initiated B2B matching. But really, we see these additional services through Austrade and FIAL as to supplement those sort of activities. If people are interested in engaging onto the Connect platform, please reach out to Wine Australia, and there are contact details post this webinar. But thank you all for attending, and I look forward to seeing how the webinar goes.
Thank you, Stuart. Okay, so now we're going to start the section of the webinar, which is all about educating and learning about the market and the opportunities. And we are very lucky to have Rebecca Ball in market with her team, who is always willing and able to help the industry to open up opportunities in Vietnam. So Rebecca, over to you. Thank you.
Well, good morning from Vietnam, and so great to see so many people online this morning and such interest in the Vietnam market. Thank you, Rod, and also Stuart, for your opening remarks. But I'd firstly just like to acknowledge the hard work of my team in getting us here today, and also our expert panelists from the market. Despite COVID, things are still pretty busy. We are actually in a market where there's a lot of contestable, I guess, competition from our foreign colleagues from other countries. So we have quite a bit of work to do, and really want to use this session today to try and galvanise the industry into how we can work together to really develop the market. So I'll just make a few comments, and I'll whip through my slides very quickly, because the key thing is to hear from our people on the ground who are living and breathing and trying to continue to develop their own commercial businesses. So it's a big population, nearly 100 million. Drinking wine is still a very small part of the equation. I'll come to that in a minute. We have really suffered from, as everywhere, from the closed borders with no tourism trade. However, there has been significant uptick in domestic tourism. However, that's now clamped down because of an increase in COVID. However, across the region, in ASEAN, we are actually have travelled extremely well. However, on the, I guess, the broader framework side, we have a number of bilateral and multilateral agreements, which will create a window, a very small window of opportunity, where the tariffs will reduce down to zero in a couple of years' time. However, that won't be the main competitive reason for people purchasing Australian wine. So we do need to, I guess, exploit that. Next slide, please. Okay, so looking to just driving my own machine here. It's not good. We do have quite a lot of spending on F&B. People, it's a very big food culture. People absolutely, it's communal food eating, and food is really, really what brings people together. And it's very, it's an optimistic outlook from Deloitte's as to what the spend will be in the future. And that is also growing in the alcoholic beverages category. But as you can see, that beer is clearly a significant front runner, given, you know, the likes of Heineken and others are here and have been here for a long time. And within the spirits category and the other categories, you've got massive players like Pernod Ricard, and wine dominated by French and Italian and Chilean, which we'll come to in a minute. So I'll just move through. Wines of Vietnam, definitely dominated by the red wine, major sort of single varietals. However, there's more, I guess, blended wines coming to the market, and I'm sure my colleagues on the line from the trade will talk to that more specifically. Sparkling wine is a growing category, and it's really interesting when Han and Chi provided me with some recent quarterly statistics that we've had an increase in the, particularly in the sparkling wine category, of nearly 400% in the last quarter. And that's really quite staggering. It's coming from a low base, but certainly something we're watching as to how we can exploit that, as well as the rosé category. The price points pretty clear there. It's pretty much in the about 34 landed cost, which is about 600,000 Vietnam dong. But again, this is sort of our readout, and we'll have our colleagues on the line to sort of, I guess, reality check that too as to what they're seeing with the purchasing trends. Okay, so the key thing I'll focus on here, and this is where we really need the ear of the trade on these kind of statistics, because our own formal statistics tend to lag a little. So with our colleagues here, they'll be able to talk a bit more about some of those competitive trends from our other major competitive markets. But it's seen Australian wine has got a really good brand equity. And I guess even an anecdote I love to share, and there'll be many people on, you've already heard me say this, but we had a dinner recently hosting key contacts and stakeholders in Ho Chi Minh City at the stunning Opera House, where I had the pleasure of sitting between the French Consul General and the Italian Consul General, and they were absolutely glowing. And of course they loved their wine, but they were also sort of giving some positive feedback that the wine was really top shelf in quality. They couldn't quite pick the varietals, which was interesting. And even my colleague from the US Consul General even gave some positive feedback, which is really nice. With the export sales, it's really gone down over COVID, really declined over the past year after, you know, a gradual and steady increase. However, we do have optimism that once you know, we all work together to build the market and develop the market with the brand Australia with Wine Australia, and that we will be able to wrestle back some share from our French and Italian and Chilean friends. So I'll just move through distribution channels. Clearly, you know, there's the on and off trade channels, which my colleagues online will talk to more specifically, and will provide some notes as we share these slides and notes through to the group. You can see there that there's been a clear decrease on the back of an increase over the past, you know, year or two, but we do see a lot of growth, particularly in the grocery retail sector, which is, like many markets across Asia, open to having alcohol being sold through not just the gourmet stores, but also through to the hypermarkets. And those categories are growing quite stunningly. Just the move from the mum and pop right through to, and honestly, the specialty store, which my colleagues, the experts in the market, will talk to, will, you know, actually moving through to, you know, different levels of high end, and that middle ground where it's a mass market is really an opportunity we're yet to really exploit for Australia. Regulation, yep, complex 3 tiers tariffs. And also, it's not just tariffs, and I've mentioned that the frameworks around the reduction of import tariffs as a consequence of the multilateral agreements. It's really very much working through some of those more complex non-tariff barriers, and around having to really seek to try and get a license, because there is limitations on the number of licenses that are issued. And that's needs a fair bit of persuasion from all angles, including really driven by the importers saying they want more product in. So we need to work with them very closely, but also through our team in Hanoi, working alongside our agriculture counsellor from the Department of Agriculture and Water and Environment, Mr. Tony Harmon, who is our spectacularly busy agriculture counsellor, is working hard to see how we can maintain those good relationships to help unlock additional access. In addition, there's been a number of policies from the Vietnamese government which aren't protectionist. They're more around actually health related, in particular, bringing in drink driving legislation. And, you know, as you know, it's well, as you may well be aware, 97 million people, pretty much anyone over the age of 14, 15's got a motorbike. And increasingly cars, and obviously more trucks and like on the road. So that has really, I guess, been a wake-up call to the industry to how they navigate that, but it's actually a really positive policy, which, you know, we all applaud. Also, there are constraints around advertising. You can't actually do, it's a bit like when the ban on tobacco came in Australia in sporting events. It's kind of like that. So there needs to be different ways to promote alcohol. And my colleagues in the trade will talk to that. So challenges and impacts. We have been, well, I said earlier at the outset, quite well contained, and the Vietnamese government people have been incredibly disciplined in their containment and care for one another in being able to enforce and address cases as they come on board. And that we had a really nice, I guess, golden period over the past couple of months where there were no cases at all and only 35 deaths. And that's not bad in a community of nearly 100 million people. Clearly, borders are tightly shut, and that's testimony to the need to manage domestic community. The community itself is incredibly caring of one another, so they do take care and really do listen and take on board what the government is advising. But the actual issue for us now is that the COVID situation is on a bit of an upswing, particularly in the centre region and in the north. And so I'm feeling for my colleagues online today from Hanoi. However, it has increased, and I'm sure Jackie and John will talk a bit to this, as well as Alex, our guest sommelier, around what that's meant for having to pivot, that word, sort of shift gear to different ways of trade channels and online and direct distribution. And just for those who may not be aware, it is a massive rideshare kind of food delivery market with not only Grab here, but Gojek's now in the market, as a few others as well, and also the ability to promote. You can promote online through direct websites, but not through e-commerce. That's not allowable at this point. The other thing we all need to work on together is the need to increase the appreciation and understanding of wine, different wine varietals, and why would you pay a bit more for Australian wine? What's the difference comparative to the French, Italian, Chilean? So that's something that the team will talk to next. Next steps, really grateful to have the partnership we do with Wine Australia, and particularly the expertise they bring to the table and help us understand, and our teams, what we need to do to help promote Australian wine, tailored it to the palate here in Vietnam. And also thankful to FIAL for facilitating the program today. We are doing a program with a sommeliers organisation over the next couple of months on that educative piece, and using that as a way to, I guess, to get greater reach into the market through social media, as well as doing in-store promotions through our Taste of Australia program, which is somewhat subdued as a consequence at the moment with restrictions of gatherings, but we'll continue to reframe those as we can, and make sure we are doing what we can with the trade, with the hotel, the HoReCa sector, as well as our own program through the consulate here and in the embassy in Hanoi. So our job, help work with the trade to find opportunities and influence the purchasers on why they should be buying Australian wine over others. It's also incumbent on the industry and all you online, including our state and territory colleagues and industry associations, to really look at what we need to do collectively to develop the market with promotional persuasion, investments, and also to work with us and the Austrade Agribusiness Expansion Initiative, that's the ABI program, for want of another good bureaucratic acronym, to look across markets as to what you might need to do to calibrate and consider market entry, and at what point, and work with our teams on multi-market support so we can get some efficiencies going. And I know, just looking at the list of attendees, I'm really delighted to see so many of our existing clients through the Accelerate program, and really want to be continuing to work with you where we can. And on that note, I'd just like to again thank my colleague Han here in Ho Chi Minh City, and Chi in in Hanoi, and also our expert panelists for being with us here today, and hope you enjoy the rest of the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. And look, if you haven't already reached out, you should be talking to Austrade for support. They have, you know, there's so many. I mean, they have some amazing reports as well too that I've seen lately coming out of Austrade as well too. Lots of good information there. Oh, apologies, my phone. So yeah, so do reach out to Austrade for additional support. Now we're very lucky to have Jackie Lam. Jackie Lam is the co-director at RADA Vietnam, and she will cover today opportunities and challenges for wine distribution and consumption and trends in Vietnam. Over to you, Jackie.
Thanks so much, Rod. I'm going to try my very best because I'll be really honest, this is my field of expertise. So before I begin, I'm just going to introduce my husband, Andy, who, can you see it? Okay. So Andy and I started RADA Vietnam 6 years ago now. We chose the name RADA because it was one of the easiest things to say. It's easy for the Vietnamese to pronounce, and you don't want anything difficult. RADA stands for Really Affordable, Deliciously Australian. And we have coined it so that we actually coined it in a last minute attempt on the way to an interview. So it was just by chance. But it reflects that predominantly, other than some spirits and products from elsewhere, all our wines are from Australia. And our aim is to offer a wide range of affordable, exceptional quality wines representing major wine areas in Australia. And the goal was to be, or is to be, Vietnam's Australian wine specialist. Now, if you see you can see we're talking about the market trends by country at the moment, and you've got those numbers there. These are the numbers for the last 4 years from imports and the customs. Now, what does this mean though? Can I go to the next slide, please, Charles? What does this mean? It means that even in a pandemic, the Italian wine is still the most popular in Vietnam. They were the only ones that grew, as you can tell. They were the only ones with a +2%. The varietal from the Italian wines, Primitivo is one of the most popular. It's very jammy, it's sweet, incredibly high in ABV, and the packaging is what really, really attracts Vietnamese to this. The premium heavy bottles, deep punch, it drives the growth. And you can see until 2020, Australia was the fastest growing. We've all suffered as a result of the pandemic. French wines have sort of plateaued, so have Chilean wines, and they're declining because the wines are traditionally so tannic, and it is the key opposite of what they like here in Vietnam. They really prefer nice, sweet, jammy wines. Next slide, please. I'm just going to run through this really quickly and make it such that people can have an opportunity to ask any questions that they would like after, because I can't really think of everything. So one of the opportunities is that this market is like China 10 years ago. So the purchasing of the wine, the alcohol, everything starts off based on being for an occasion or a food pairing. So similar to China then. Now, so if you've exported to China previously, you can replicate that same model here for consumers, for trade. There are lots of opportunities for all of us here in the wine industry here in Vietnam. Secondly, I used to be an educator for almost 20 years. My key thing is you don't know what you don't know. So knowledge of wine is in its infancy here into the broader Vietnamese consumer. There is a lot of room for growth. And there is huge growing interest in the locals towards wine in general. Now, Rebecca said, with close to 100 million people in population and a very fast growing middle class, Vietnam already accounts for the third largest ASEAN wine consumer market, hence the interest. Consumption of alcohol is a daily event for many Vietnamese. Yes, they make their own rice wines, they've got beers, but wine is growing. Because of that, we have the opportunity to educate them on what is so special about Australian wine. Why buy Australian wine? Andy and I constantly sprout these 3 key reasons to buy Australian wines: premium, safe, quality, reputation. That's 1. 2, fruit driven. It's easy to drink, it's easy to pair with food. 3, the label and the bottles, they are easy to remember and recall. It's easy to read, they know, you look at the name, you know, look at the varietal, you know exactly what you're going to get. So, as everybody who is successful can tell you, we've got to sell what we're good at. And what are we good at? We have very good juice, bloody good value for money juice. So for example, we have big jammy Shirazes, and internationally, when people speak about Australian wines, most of them speak about our Shiraz. And Shiraz is also one of the most famous Australian grapes for Vietnamese because it is so suitable for their palate. Now, with the good always comes the bad. Challenges. It is effing hard. Number 1, bottle by bottle sales. It is literally like door to door, bottle by bottle, one at a time. You have to be bloody patient. Australian wine consumption is in its infancy stage. Wine in general is in its infancy stage. Like I said, there is a lot of room to grow. However, it's hard. Advertising of alcohol, as mentioned, is not allowed. Well, it's not permitted for any beverage over 15% ABV and severely restricted for between 5 to 15% ABV. So this does limit your brand building and your direct marketing. Thankfully though, social media is huge here. So a lot of advertising is done via Facebook, Instagram, and Zalo, which is Vietnam's version of WeChat and WhatsApp. However, there are a lot of boundaries put on by Facebook, for example, on the marketplace. The word wine cannot be mentioned. Alcohol is no longer allowed to be mentioned when advertising. So you've got to be very, very creative in how you get your products out there and known. Wine is still seen as an upper class product. So affordability and distribution is still driving the wine growth. And as most of these occasions for wine for the Vietnamese, they're very status driven. With the middle income bracket growing, more and more consumers are considering wine as the alternative. They love being seen with a bottle of wine on their table. They have no clue what it is. They don't know what it tastes like. They might not even care how much it costs. But the wine bottle on the table nowadays signifies a growth in their status, and they're better than their neighbors who don't have it. One of the key challenges for Vietnam and working in Vietnam is that there are many countries within one. I would split it into 3, the North, the Central, and the South. North being Hanoi as a representative and all its northern provinces, Central being Da Nang and Hoi An being the ones that are known, and the South being Ho Chi Minh City or Saigon. One thing is they are chalk and cheese, so one size does not fit all. Even though previously I said that your distributor, your consumer trade programs that worked in China 10 years ago can be used here, it will have to be tailored for specific markets. For example, in the North and in the provinces, they really much prefer a sweet, heavy red wine. In the South, in Saigon, broader range is accepted. They're very open. Men and women are very open to the whites, to the reds, to sweet wines, to all kinds. They're very interested in learning. In the North, the interesting thing is that they are interested in the individual, not in the product. So for example, we import Australian wines. In the North, they would prefer to see an Australian male. Hence, I pimp my husband out. No shame in it. I've no shame in it. We lived in Hanoi for 3.5 years, almost 4 years, and I was incredibly unsuccessful. They're not interested in speaking to the woman, even though the women in the North are the ones who control finances, purse strings, and actually run the businesses. The men are actually figureheads. They're the ones that the women send out there to drink, to party, and to be the face of the business. So that's what I had to adopt after 3.5 years, 4 years of living in Hanoi. That's exactly what I did. I sent Andy up north, into the offices, smile, and kiss. That's what he does. They really want to see the individual to be because we're importing a foreign product, they want the foreigner and they want the male there. In the South, they're more interested in the product and in the quality. So I haven't had as much difficulties here in the South. Now, next slide, please, Charles. How to expand in the market. Very quickly, long-term investment. You need to be patient. You need to be persistent. You need to be consistent. Vietnam is not a one-stop shop where you hope to get rich quick. It is a long-term investment in not only your brand, but also in influencing the overall growth of Australian wines. There is a spot for every one of us. I think a realistic expectation is a minimum of 5 to 8 years. To be really, really honest, if that had been told to me at the beginning of my journey when I left Sydney to come here, I would have said no thank you to my husband. But after having spent almost 6 years in Vietnam, I can now say we are at the point where we can see and we can reap rewards from what we have put into RADA. Secondly, local brand ambassador. Optimal way to build your brand in country is to always have a local brand ambassador like the Botley. They now have theirs in Hanoi, based in Hanoi. So for us, Andy and I are RADA's brand ambassadors as well as brand ambassadors for each of our partners. Regular country visits when possible. They love, love, love. Winemaker, brand ambassador, big honcho visits. Always readily appreciated, always welcomed by the locals. It makes them feel really special that Vietnam has been singled out because Vietnam has been forgotten for so long. During COVID, to work around this, we've had our winemakers, our brand ambassadors, and our big honchos send video recordings for our customers. So when we are able to have wine dinners and wine promotions and events here, what we've done is we've done a recording and that has just gone down a treat. They love the fact that they have been thought of by the Australian counterpart for whom they are representing and working for. Customer incentives to visit Australia. Everyone knows someone who has been to Australia for tourism or study, especially here in Vietnam. A lot of them view Australia as the aspirational country to visit. Where do you want to send your child for studies? Oh, Australia is a really good place to go. Where do you want to go and visit? Oh, I'm going to go to Australia. But most of the distributors have not had the opportunity to visit the brands that they sell. And I will say in a nutshell, 99%. All of our distributors signed on to a program that we had pre-COVID about visiting as a customer incentive to visit Australia. And the minute borders are open, I guarantee you we will be taking them through on that. Digital content. Next page, please, Charles. Digital content. So the more digital content that wineries send with us, share with us, the more we can use on our different platforms. There is a huge demand for seasonality usage of wines. So Chinese New Year or Tet here. You develop your brand for key gift giving, for example, Tet. Women's Day, they celebrate both of that here. Mooncake Festival, wedding season, it's huge. Accolades, the more awards you have, high ratings, any number, any gold star, sticker, anything, it's incredibly important for the Vietnam consumer. It elevates your wine status straight away. Bottle, label, liquid considerations. One of the things we have to take into consideration, as I said, the reason why the Italians are so successful is because of the bottle. It's heavy, it's expensive, it's got a deep punch, it's got high ABV. Do they care what it tastes like? No. Beautiful. It feels beautiful. It's heavy. It must be beautiful. Gift boxing is a huge thing here, creating gift boxes for specific big label wines. And last but not least, but your brand story. Ultimately, your wine brand will need a brand story that sings, it waxes lyrical, it touches the heart of the locals. Basically, cutting through the competitive noise from the other countries, and that will get you there. So, for pricing, I only have 2 bits, 2 very important bits. Price is a significant challenge in Vietnam. Because of the high taxes that have to be paid upfront in cash before the product can be imported, price is a significant challenge. Bonded storage facilities here in Vietnam. Taxes. Rebecca touched on this. 3 types of taxes: import tax, consumption tax, value added tax. Currently, import tax is 50%. Consumption tax or special sales tax is 35%. Value added tax, VAT, is 10%. This adds up to a whopping 95%, which, as I mentioned before, has to be paid in cash before customs will release your products for you to sell. This is all based on your invoice, CIF cost, your cost insurance rate, okay? Now, the free trade agreements that were signed, Comprehensive Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP, and the ASEAN Australia New Zealand Free Trade Area, AANZFTA, they're all a mouthful. It was signed a few years ago. From us on the ground, we have seen no benefit of this to date. So to this point, I also have to add, one of the learnings that we have had as RADA is that because we are a small growing business, consolidate our shipments in Singapore to come to either Ho Chi Minh City or to Hanoi, where we port at Hai Phong. Vietnam Customs have identified our shipments as exiting Singapore, not Australia. So despite our certificate of origins, our shipments are coming from Singapore. And this gray area has meant that we are unsure if either of these agreements will ever apply to us. So plenty for you to think about, and happy to take questions at the end. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jackie. And thank you for, well, outlining some of those realities, I guess, in market realities and the demographics. I think there's some really critical insights there. So yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. On to our next in-market expert. We're very lucky to have Mr. John Garner, General Director, Caravel Saigon Hotel, on the call today. And he will cover the state of play in the hospitality trade. Over to you, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Rod. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, wherever you may be in Australia. Just to give you a bit of background on myself, I've been wandering around Asia for 26 years and worked in 6 different countries in Asia, managing 5-star hotels. The last 14 years here in Vietnam. Before Vietnam, I was in China for 6 years. And probably what I'm going to say is a little bit copies what Jackie has said and what Rebecca has said, but I'll add my 2 cents worth in. Having been here for 14 years, I've seen enormous growth in the industry. It's been incredible. And particularly in the last 4 to 5 years, restaurants opening and hotels opening all around the country every day almost. It's phenomenal. And you know, that has led to, I imagine, an incredible increase in wine consumption. But as Jackie said, it's a very young market. They're not so educated in what wine is all about. And there are 3 very different countries within the country, and it's quite different. Down in the south here, the locals are very open, much more open than in the north, and open to trying new things. And that developing middle class, as Jackie said, it's increasing all the time. The discretionary dollar is growing. People are really interested in wine. And just to give you an example, I had a meeting in Hanoi with a construction contractor, a young guy, project manager, and we got talking over lunch, and he was telling me about his love of wine. And I was quite surprised. He was a guy in his mid-30s, and he was telling me he's got 2 wine fridges at home full of wines. He had about 500 bottles of wine in his own home. And I was absolutely shocked that this young guy was so into wine. And I don't know how common that would be in the country, but you know, the growing appreciation of wine is certainly coming along. By comparison to China, as I said, I worked there for 6 years prior to coming here. Jackie said Vietnam's, you know, 10 years behind China. I would say 15 to 20 years behind China, quite frankly. But it just shows you the potential growth. And before Australia had this little hiccup with China, the consumption of wine in China was huge, and it certainly was even when I lived there. They loved the red wines particularly. European wine consumption in Vietnam, I think a lot of it's to do with historical reasons. Vietnam being controlled and governed by the French sort of 100 years ago. I think a lot of that is the reason why they always lean toward French wines, but also the distributors here in Vietnam. Most of them, apart from Rada Wines, have European people. They're either owned by Europeans, or there's the partnership with Europeans, and they tend to push the European wines. And I think that's a lot of the reason why Italian and French wines have been in the past very, very popular. You've now got Rada Wines, who specialise in Australian wines, and I don't think there's any other distributor that specialises in a particular country's wine like Rada do. All the other wine distributors have wines from all over the country, all over the world. So it's very, very competitive, extremely competitive. And we have, obviously, we work with many distributors in the hotel, and we do a lot of wine dinners and wine tastings and wine promotions. And I just think a lot of the comments that were said earlier about the Australian wines, they're very well accepted here. Very, very well, not by just the local Vietnamese, but also the expat population, which is also a very much growing population. I think you know, if we talk about COVID, it's been a very difficult time for the hotel industry or hospitality industry, as we had total lockdown 12, 15 months ago. And that was very difficult for us. We had to close all of our food and beverage outlets. And gradually over the last 12 months, we've been able to open those, but every time there's an outbreak, we have to either close the restaurants and bars that we have in the hotels, or we have to reduce the numbers down to maximum 30 packs. And very, very difficult to manage like that. Very difficult for in terms of managing staff and managing stock. You can imagine food is extremely difficult to manage in those situations. And of course, we end up carrying a lot of wine and beverage. So, you know, but you can see the potential. You know, the tourism in 2019, I think Rebecca said, grew by something like 18 or 19%. And one of the fastest growing tourism markets in Southeast Asia, percentage-wise. And you know, there were predictions that those sort of figures would continue prior to COVID coming, that those figures would continue for the next few years, that the growth in tourism is huge. People want to find somewhere new apart from going to Phuket or Bali or some of the other destinations. So the growth after COVID, I can imagine it's going to be massive, and not just tourism, but also corporate business. The economy is, apart from the hospitality industry, the rest of the economy is pretty much booming, and I'm very, very sure that once this coming 2022 or 2023, after we get through this COVID hiccup, I'm very sure that all the hotels will be full. And what's attracting more tourists here is the infrastructure. The infrastructure in Vietnam is developing very, very fast with new hotels and coastal resorts all around the country. There's new airports, airport routes. The beaches are wonderful here, and they're getting more well known. And the government is also putting a huge amount of money behind tourism promotion, which wasn't the case 10, 15 years ago. So we're looking forward to great times in the future. It's huge potential. Market entry considerations. Yeah, difficult. I think probably Jackie is better to talk about this than I am. But one thing I will say, I've been to many wine promotions from different countries, and I recall going some years ago, going to some Australian wine promotions where before Taste of Australia, there was always some wine promotions here. And wine makers or wine company representatives would come up here, display their wines, and expect that the distributors would just accept them and put them into the market. Well, that's not going to happen, because there's, as I said earlier, and what Jackie said, there's a huge amount of competition from other countries' wines. And the distributors don't want to take on too many wines. The cost of carrying the wines is just too much. So you have to have a compelling story. I think, people are tending to go towards Australian wines because of the tastes, as was previously mentioned. And the population is getting more educated in that respect. And the top 2 or 3% of Vietnam and the population are extremely rich, very, very, very rich. And they can afford to pay the prices in the top restaurants or have them in their own homes. Promotions, working with distributors, certainly having a brand ambassador up here would go a long way. And again, I don't want to copy exactly what Jackie's saying, but I agree with that wholeheartedly. Wine tastings, education, lessons, that sort of thing. Be prepared to put some dollars into marketing, because that's certainly what you're going to do, but it'll pay you dividends. It might take some time, but it will pay dividends in the end. And just to give you some idea what other countries do, every year there's a very large group of wine makers and wine representatives from Bordeaux come to Vietnam, and they're here for a week. And there's probably about 40 to 50 chateaus represented, and they have a massive wine tasting exhibition in one of the hotels. They then have a very large dinner, and they do that in Saigon, in Da Nang, and Hanoi. And that's happened every year since I've been here, pre-COVID. So that's something, Australian winemakers might like to consider, doing exactly that. And I know Taste of Australia does that to a large extent, but just focusing on wine like the French do really is a big plus for them, and it really works. Yeah, restaurants, I mentioned before, the restaurants that are opening, even during COVID, even though some restaurants in some parts of the city have closed, there is new restaurants opening up all the time. I think they just see this as an opportunity to get into the market now. They know that the business will come back, and when we don't have any outbreaks of COVID, most of the restaurants are doing pretty well, even right now. And even for us, you know, even though our occupancy has been less than 10% over the last 15 months, when we had the restaurants open, they were running pretty full. Our F&B was doing very, very well. So we were very pleased. And it just goes to show you that once we get through this COVID, I'm very, very sure that all the hotels and restaurants will be full. And it's just a great opportunity for Australian wines, for all the reasons that that Rebecca and Jackie have said prior to me. So education is the big thing. Wine, you know, point of sale collateral, wines of the month, selling wine by the glass, that always works, certainly in the hotels and restaurants. Not everybody wants a bottle or two of wine with their dinner, or they can't afford it or can't drink that much. But certainly going around talking to the restaurant owners, managers and hotel food and beverage people, and just being there all the time knocking on doors. It's a huge opportunity in this country going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Rod would just like to say, send his apologies. He's had to nip off, but thank you, John, for your very optimistic potential and opportunity of the Vietnamese market.
Okay, happy to take questions later.
Yeah. So next we'll move on to Alex Sen from L3WSBT Wine Master Sommelier.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Arithik, the wine consultant and wine educator in Vietnam. So my background is I have worked in different five-star hotel in Vietnam and overseas. And I have also around 7 years working in a wine importer company in charge about the wine training and wine event. So I got different title through the different sommelier competition in Vietnam and overseas. I have lucky to have a visit 4 times in Europe and twice 2 times in Australia for discovering different wine region to understand more about the wine. So with my experience and knowledge, and I start the wine from zero, so I understand how the Vietnamese people they enjoy the wine. So that's why I would like to bring my experience, my kind of wine knowledge to Vietnamese wine community to make sure they understand about the wine and they can enjoy the wine, they can selling the wine properly. So to understand the Vietnamese wine consumption culture, we need to know what the people think about the wine and what people know about the wine. So as you know, Vietnam is a agricultural country, so it means they producing a lot of rice. So that's why a long time ago, so most of local spirits are made from rice. So that's why people with any occasion or any time they enjoy the local spirits. So because it's very often and very popular. And then the reason is before they are a little bit poor, so that's why they are easy for them to buy the local spirits made from rice. They are very cheap. And then when the people move a little bit to drinking wine, and then the first wine they know is a Bordeaux wine. It's not the other appellation of French wine, but only Bordeaux. So they just know only Bordeaux. Bordeaux become very popular, so that's why people say Bordeaux color in Vietnam sometimes. And recently, the new world wine also become quite popular, especially from back to 10 to 15 years ago. Chilean wine is very popular, but recently, Italian wine, especially Pulian wine, the Pulian appellation from South Australia. I will tell you why the reason why the Pulian wine is popular in Vietnam right now. But besides that, as you know, that Vietnamese, we drink alcohol a lot. We drink local spirit, we drink beer and any the other spirit. And now they move day by day. They move to enjoy the wine. So that's why the wine consumption is increasing year by year. As I know before, when I have in wine importer, increasing average by year out 25%. So that's why people say Vietnam is a very potential country for selling wine.
Next slide, please.
Next slide, please. So because we are the agricultural country, so that's why when they enjoy the spirit, they tend to be drink the alcohol, the spirit with very high alcohol content. So that's why when they move to enjoy the wine, they like some wine with very full body, with high alcohol content, and with the jammy, very fruity and jammy character, and a touch of sweetness with balanced tannins. And then the alcohol consumption in Vietnam is less than the white. I mean, why the consumption in Vietnam is less than 5%. And then very little people know about the wine. So less than 1% is the wine connoisseur. So that's why when the people buy the wine, they buy the wine. They're looking for the alcohol. They're looking for the label design and bottle shape, etc. And the other reason is in Vietnam we are like a sommelier in a different restaurant, hotel, and wine lounge. And when the guests come in, they don't know how to upselling the wine, and they let the guest choose any wine they want. And the wine knowledge is quite limited for Vietnamese. I like say when they buy the wine, they by selecting the nice bottle shape, nice label design, high alcohol content, mostly very high alcohol content. They like it. They don't buy the wine by appellation or by producer. So that's why. And the other reason is when they enjoy the wine, they buy the wine from France. So they think the wine with the bottling with the Villiers cost is better than skincare. So that's why the reason the Australian wine have some difficulties, some challenges. So that's why in terms of wine educator, I would like to share my knowledge. So that's why I conduct a lot of wine training and sharing a wine knowledge for the customer and wine lover. And I do a lot of speak for different wine seminars in Vietnam, both in Vietnamese and sometimes English. I do a lot of wine seminar for the wine producer overseas. And then I have a fan page, Vietnamese wine lover fan page with around 21,000 members. And I write some article to share the knowledge to make sure they understand about the wine. And also I support different wine sommelier competition in French, Italian, mostly French wine. But I hope in the future the Australian Austrade and Austrade wine we will organize a lot of wine sommelier competition about the Australian wine to make sure we can develop more wine knowledge for Vietnamese about the Australian wine. And also I do have a lot of different wine talk on television. In different channel, national channel, and I also do the wine knowledge through different video on YouTube channel.
Next slide, please.
And next, please. So that's why for me, my knowledge is from zero to become the sommelier. So I understand very well how Vietnamese they enjoy the wine. So that's why for myself, I would like to bring my experience and my knowledge. To make sure Vietnamese wine community they know how to enjoy and for people they work in F&B, hotel, restaurant, they can serve the wine properly. Something you think is very simple like storage condition, service temperature, food wine pairing and choosing the correct glass with wine. But in Vietnam it's not normal. People don't pay much attention about that. They can drink any. Sometimes they drink red wine with seafood. If they say it's good. So that's why sometimes we do a lot of wine training for them. And for the people who work in restaurants or they are owner of restaurant or manager, they must understand. Mostly, I mean local people. They must understand how to select the right wine with the concept, and they can select good value of money of wine. So that's why they can select good wine with typical character, which type of grape from which appellation, and then finally they can change the way how to enjoy and select the wine. It's my duty. So the other lesson that Vietnamese wine market needs is because like I said, they don't know anything about the wine. The reason why they enjoy a lot of French wine or even Italian wine. French wine is a long-time influence. Italian wine, they adapt the local palate. I mean Vietnamese local, and so that's why education, like people said, education marketing is very really necessary to make sure people know about the wine. And about the Australian wine, I think you have a lot of advantage. For example, you have a lot of international grape with good quality, and you have also very specific appellation with different grape. So people will enjoy the wine. For example, they can compare the Australian wine and French wine style. You have a very quite similar, like Bordeaux style or Sauvignon Blanc or Cabernet Sauvignon or Shiraz. You have a very good appellation to compare with French wine. Even some blending Sauvignon Blanc Semillon or Shiraz Viognier or Cabernet Merlot, something like this. It's very good. And the other, you have a very various type wine, enough to people to select the wine, and also very good quality. And the other reason is Australia is nearer Vietnam than Europe or America. I think it's a good advantage. And the others, there are a lot of Vietnamese who live in Australia, so they can share the culture, the wine culture for Vietnamese local in Vietnam. So I think again to promote the wine, I mean Australian wine in Vietnam, you also do a lot of event, tasting, seminar, wine education and competition, long term and very consistency. I just give you an example. French wine is very famous. When people study about the wine, they study Bordeaux, they study Champagne, they study about the Burgundy, and they know how it's the Grand Cru Glacé. It means that people, every time they think about the French wine, they think about something like this. And so that's why for Australian wine, we need to spend more time to give the people the knowledge. And I'm sure that Australian wine will have a big market share in Vietnam in the near future. So that's all from myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex, for that very detailed insights into the consumer trends currently in Vietnam. Next, we'll move on to logistics and freight with Paul Levin from Compliance Facilities and Vehicles Manager at CT Freight.
Hi everybody, thank you for asking CT Freight to assist with your discussion on exporting wine to Vietnam. Just a brief background on CT Freight. So CT Freight offers all facets of international freight forwarding and logistics. We offer a global service to provide you with a complete worldwide transport and distribution solution, no matter what the size, weight, origin or destination. CT Freight's an Australian-owned company, one of the few major ones in Australia of our size. We were established in 1981. Regularly, we are the #1 export IATA agent in Australia. That's something we're quite proud of. And we've got branches all around Australia, and then New Zealand, Fiji, Singapore, USA, and then agreements with specialised agents around the world. So we can help you with a comprehensive range of freight forwarding products for air freight and sea freight for both export and import, including customs clearance and express cargo. And probably our biggest division is our perishable division, where we handle a variety of products, which include meat, seafood, produce, flowers, dairy, live animals, pharmaceuticals, and obviously wine as well, to anywhere in the world. So I've been asked to go through a few points of discussion. So one of the areas at the moment is IFAM. So IFAM is the International Freight Assistance Program, which is a temporary government program to assist with export air freight from Australia due to the COVID situation. Now, the eligibility criteria that needs to be met for IFAM is that products are time sensitive, they're high value items and reliant on air freight. So unfortunately, generally, that is not going to apply to wine. Wine isn't eligible for that at the moment. It's more sort of focused on produce, meat and seafood or similar items like that. In relation to operation models and customs requirements, exporting wine to Vietnam will require full documentation to be completed at origin and constantly to meet local import requirements. Exporters should start by getting in contact with Wine Australia to ensure all requirements are met prior to exporting. Exporters are required to have an export permit from Wine Australia for each consignment leaving in Australia in excess of 100 litres. So the process, the shipment at destination that the importers require, they'll obviously need an import customs declaration, invoice and packing list, bill of lading or airway bills, and certificate of origins are always quite handy. And then the importer would also need an import license for those wine products. Quite often, first-time import shipments of wine will require quality and food safety testing on arrival. Freight forwarders such as CT Freight can assist both the export and import process of these shipments. So the distribution and warehousing landscape in Vietnam is there's a lot of experienced agents that can assist with you the import and clearance process, and then also assist with the warehousing and distribution around Vietnam. Haiphong or Ho Chi Minh City would generally be the best areas to distribute from, and there are facilities there that have dedicated wine storage areas available. Okay, sea freight and air freight routing available. Larger sea freight, wine is typically moved by sea freight. Sea freight's available from all major Australian ports in Australia to major ports in Vietnam. There are multiple shipping lines that have services to Vietnam from Australia, and generally the transit's anywhere from 15 to 31 days. CT Freight can assist with all sea freight services, including LCL, less than container load cargo, general containers, reefers, and transport and loading. If you need air freight, there are flights ex-Sydney and Melbourne to Vietnam still at the moment with cargo available. There is an airline trucking service from Melbourne and Brisbane to Sydney to connect with the Sydney flights. Currently, the flight schedule ex-Sydney is Hanoi on a Monday only, and then Sydney to Ho Chi Minh City on a Tuesday and a Saturday. And Melbourne's also got an option to Ho Chi Minh City on a Saturday. So how the pandemic has affected logistics and freight to Vietnam. The main effect COVID has on international freight is the pressure that it's put on both air freight and sea freight, which has reduced space availability and increased prices. For air freight, there has been substantially reduced flights available. Traditionally, most cargo that is air freighted around the world is moved in the cargo hold of passenger aircraft. So the supply of air cargo space has been greatly reduced due to the lack of flights moving. Due to this reduction, the prices of air freight has increased dramatically, and securing space is very hard. CT Freight is one of the few agents that have airlines agreements and year-round buying power to the amount, so we can always secure air freight space for you, given sufficient time. The pressure on air freight has also put additional pressure on sea freight. A lot of cargo that was previously moving air freight due to convenience has now moved across to sea freight, so the availability of sea freight bookings and containers is at a premium. There has been a shortage of empty containers available, which causes delays, and also there's been congestion at ports causing delays. In addition to the delays, the rates have increased substantially due to the lack of supply, and surcharges have been put in place by both the shipping line for issues like port congestion. Currently, freight rates for both air freight and sea freight are very volatile and subject to change, regular changes, unfortunately, from the shipping lines and airlines, along with origin and destination port operators. My best advice to assist exporters to get through this period is to have a great relationship with an experienced freight forwarder such as CT Freight, and to allow as much notice as possible for bookings to give you the chance of securing export space in the time frame you require. I'd recommend 2 to 4 weeks notice for air freight and 4 to 6 weeks notice for sea freight for new bookings. And if you've got any questions or information you need on schedules or rates, please contact us at CT Freight. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul, for your insights into freights and